whenever it's plugged in, you have like within 30 minutes, with the set of automation scripts that have been created, the whole region comes up. The whole region is live. And then with a config map change, that region goes live.
Hey team, Sid here, and this is DevOps Deployed, the show where we take a look at DevOps and cloud infrastructure in the wild. Each week, I interview industry experts about their experience building software systems and the teams behind them. Today, I'm joined by Saiyam Pathak. Saiyam is the Director of Technical Evangelism at Civo, a Kubernetes-focused cloud provider. He's also a CNCF ambassador and host of the Certs Magic Show on Cloud Native TV. He runs a YouTube channel of his own focused on cloud native technologies. Saiyam, welcome to the show.
Hi, Sid. Glad to be here on the show and really excited to talk about, what DevOps mean to me and how we are implementing it at Civo.
I'm excited as well. And I like to start each episode of the show with a similar question just to set the groundwork and think about how our guests are thinking and talking about DevOps. What does the term DevOps mean to you?
I mean, you might have heard this, a number of times, but it actually, like, I would tend to give the same kind of definitions that people used to give, because it actually drills the, essence from there. It basically, DevOps means, it's a culture and a process that we need to actually understand at all levels before doing and implementing stuff. So basically the developers and the operations, both the words combining together, and then it's actually the tasks as well. So when you see, that infinite loop, you might have seen all the times.
Mm-hmm.
So all the CI/CD pipeline, starting from planning a user story. So you can call it as a user story. Some do not call it, or maybe call it as a task. So you call it from that level, planning, and then deploying it to the production. There are different pieces, and then all these pieces are dwelled in the different pieces of technologies, and that makes it a complete cycles. And that process is never ending, because you will keep on adding the features, and you'll keep repeating the cycle, because you'll be keeping on committing the code to your source code repository, which most of the times it's GitLab or GitHub. And then from there you will be having some sort of the stages or pipelines as you define with respect to different toolings that we are using. And there you will be defining each step, like committing the code, testing it out, and then pushing to the developers, staging environment, then again testing it out with the unit test scenarios, and then deploying it to the production environment with a push button and things like that.
Yeah, that's very helpful to frame the rest of this discussion. Currently, you are at Civo. Can you tell us a little bit more about Civo, what it is, how big's the team, what your role is?
Absolutely. So Civo is a cloud native service provider specializing in managed Kubernetes. So we also have the compute instances, VMs, and also the other services like managed databases, and the GPUs are coming in the coming year. And if you talk about the current state, then we also have a teams functionality where you can have the organization and the teams. It's actually deployed in the feature branch, but not yet open to the customers. I think on the first time I'm telling that. So
Ooh, big announcement.
yeah. And it was founded in 2018. We ran a beta program for our Kubernetes service, which is managed Kubernetes based on K3s. I'll talk about that a bit later on. Then after that we have built a kind of very strong community. As of now, it's close to 9,000 members, helping out each other and piloting us with respect to the features. So that plays a very important role. Our community plays a very important role, because we listen to the features and the stuff that they need in the managed Kubernetes service, and we try to merge that with our plan, our goals, and our roadmap, and then we define the complete roadmap. And most of the times we kind of quarterly publish our roadmap as well, so that people know where we are and where we are headed to in terms of the suggestions that people have been kind of giving. And we are the kind of, I would say, the first ones who are native Kubernetes. So our whole platform itself is running on Kubernetes and powered by Kubernetes. So we are kind of giving Kubernetes on top of Kubernetes. So that is something kind of special. So we have grown in terms of team. If you say we are now a team of around 30 people and a couple of openings as well. So and my role is basically director of technical evangelism, and the more confusing the title can sound, the more work it has in it. So I am kind of wearing different hats in this particular role. The like I helped in the roadmap planning, the next set of features, the next set of services that we have to build. Then I helped in building the DevRel strategy, which is quite critical in every organization these days. And the support strategy. So we have a support team, dedicated support team, and so I helped build that support strategy as well, like how it should work. Then also the open source strategy. So we have a few open source projects, and I kind of work in where else we can contribute, where else we can, what all things we can open source. Those discussions also, and then some of the new initiatives. So that also I work on. Then obviously I worked extensively on a very critical part, which is the academy. I So we at Civo have launched Civo Academy, which is a complete free Kubernetes training course for beginners, intermediate, advanced. So it has like kind of starting from very basics, and over 50 plus videos by the team, but I curated the complete course with 40 plus videos of myself. And then there is a marketplace, which I'll tell when I describe how our managed service looks like. And that marketplace also is open source actually, so I am the maintainer of that as well. uh, my current goal, or you can say the current focus, is actually on the product strategy and the customer interactions and the enterprise customers. So those are my prime focus, you can say, for the next some time actually, because I want to focus on helping the customers move to cloud, move to Kubernetes, transition, helping them in transitioning, and obviously bringing them to Kubernetes and bringing them to Civo, bringing them to use Civo Kubernetes. So that is kind of my role is. And also, yeah, apart from this, as you mentioned, I run a YouTube channel, so that is there, and I'm a CNCF ambassador, the Search Magic Show. So all these things are they also are a part of after work hours.
For sure, for sure. And you said something interesting there. I think Civo is one of the first cloud providers that your offering is really focused on this managed Kubernetes. Many other cloud providers have lots of things and then have a managed Kubernetes offering, but Civo, that has made that the core focus of what you do. And I think that was a really interesting decision as more and more people migrate onto this platform. You also mentioned that it's based on K3s instead of K8s, which is the sort of full-fledged Kubernetes. Can you talk about that decision and what K3s is for anyone who's not familiar?
Absolutely. So our managed Kubernetes, which is called Civo Kubernetes, is based on K3s. K3s is a certified Kubernetes distribution. It is Kubernetes conformant, and it is a CNCF sandbox project as well. So it is like well-defined place in the CNCF ecosystem, the first distribution to get a sandbox status. So that means, the community behind that, more than 10K stars, and it is a super cool communities there driving the project. And it's very simple. So basically K3s, like in Kubernetes, the complete K8s, you have different components. So you have a control plane component, you have the controller manager, you have the API server, you have etcd. They all are separate pieces which are out there. And then similarly on the node, you have different components. But in K3s, everything runs as a single process. So K3s is a single binary close to 50 MB. So you can say like 50 megabytes is quite less. So the running footprint is pretty low. The CPU and memory footprint is pretty low. And that's what helps us to speed up the cluster launches. So at the moment, like if you launch a Civo Kubernetes cluster, it launches under 2 minutes. And which managed service gives you that? And that power itself brings so many use cases for the developers, for the enthusiasts, for the learning purpose, for R&D, and so on. So I think K3s, whatever you can do on any managed, to be honest, in any managed Kubernetes service, you will be able to do on K3s, because there's not something that has been eliminated. There are some like entry cloud providers, entry storage drivers which have been removed, which also makes sense because people have their own CSI drivers implemented. After that, people have their own plugins which are own cloud controller managers which they use. So it doesn't make sense to have everything and run that as giving that as a service. So I think when K3s came out, it was very we thought like it would be the best fit for what we want to give, because we want something which is kind of unique. And this makes us unique because we are the first ones to have that managed K3s. And it is fast, it is single binary, running everything as a single process, and we are able to achieve faster cluster launch times, and team is actually working on making it even faster, making it under 60 seconds, and then probably under 30 seconds. So like that's how we are kind of progressing. And so I really like that's the K3s approach, and it is well aligned with the upstream Kubernetes in terms of the upgrade. So whenever upgrade comes, there is a kind of upgrade in a defined path, at least not immediate, but they are very close to the latest upgrades, as immediate as possible.
Yeah. The other thing I picked up on as you described Civo is the fact that Civo itself is running on top of Kubernetes, right? Can you talk about that supercluster architecture and how customer clusters are running on top of the Civo supercluster?
Absolutely. So we have our superclusters is basically Kubernetes. It's a full-fledged Kubernetes cluster, and on top of that we run something which is called KubeVirt. So KubeVirt is a technology that lets you run virtual machines side by side, your containerized workloads. Very cool and very amazing technology out there. It is kind of growing in different pieces, used at various places, and we've found that this would be the perfect use case to kind of use the Kubernetes powers and also natively provide the solution, the Kubernetes solution on top of that. So when a customer is creating a Kubernetes cluster, it is the virtual machines that a KubeVirt is, a KubeVirt is translating and running the QEMU process within our Kubernetes cluster. So basically, they are running as pods. The Kubernetes clusters that the customer is running, they are running as pods inside our supercluster within their particular namespace. So they are completely isolated because we are using the Kubernetes powers over there. So that is there. Plus, we have written our own operators for each of the functionality that we want to dwell into the Kubernetes, into the customer's Kubernetes cluster. We write the operator framework. Extensibility of Kubernetes is amazing, and our team kind of has I would say like they have kind of specialized in writing the operators. Our team has written so many operators, and we have like they are running for storage we have our operator, for for instance operations we have another operator. So we have a lot of operators which are running, and they help in functioning of the complete services that we provide. So I think that makes it using the powers of Kubernetes. So in terms of monitoring, so we have the monitoring solutions, and we use the pods, the power of pods. We create the PVCs as the storages. So I think those us using the power of Kubernetes is a very plus point. Plus, the customer also is getting the flavor of Kubernetes, so they are getting K3s. So we are managing the control plane, and they are only seeing the worker the worker nodes on which their actual workloads run in their UI or the CLI, wherever they have spent up the clusters.
And I heard, I think it was your CTO on the Popcast talking about the process of bringing a new data center online. And so I know Civo has data centers around the world, and he was mentioning bringing it online and the speed at which you were able to do that. Can you talk through, can you walk me through that story of like what is involved in doing that and how DevOps plays a role in that process?
Yeah, that's another very very cool thing that our team has achieved, and they are even improving on that again. The brilliant brains which are there at Civo, what we use is we used open compute hardware. we have NVMe storage, and we have something which is called zero touch provisioning. So you can see, whenever a rack it is getting shipped to a particular region, so whenever it's plugged in, you have like within 30 minutes, with the set of automation scripts that have been created, the whole region comes up, the whole region is live. And then with a config map change, that region goes live. So we just have to have a config map change and the region will go live and the customers will be able to see that region. So at present you have like the London, the NYC, and the Frankfurt regions, and we kind of plan to launch more regions in the near future. So I think that's pretty interesting. And we also have like some what you call private regions as well getting implemented. So that's another kind of story, that some organizations, they only wanted dedicated private regions, so they have their own set racked with the specifications that we mentioned, because it has to meet the performance. If it doesn't meet the hardware specs, then the performance would go down. So we have a standard kind of performance specs prepared by our network team, and then we have our vendors through which we kind of order the complete equipment. Then it ships to different countries, and after the logistics have been taken care, and as soon as they plug in the power, everything starts running and all the automation scripts start running, people are able to access that. And after that, once our Kubernetes cluster, the supercluster is live, so we have the region, we have the kube configs, we can connect to that, and after that you have the config map changes on the API side, obviously on the web, wherever the web API is running, and there you will be just adding a particular region, and on the UI you will be seeing another region. So I think that's pretty dope within 30 minutes of time.
Wow, yeah, that is a very fast timeline. And you mentioned some of these custom scripts that the Civo team has written to bring up the hardware. Can you talk about other infrastructure as code usage in that process? Are you using any of the mainstream tools in that? How much? And I guess because you're provisioning your own physical hardware, you don't have an API initially until you've brought up some of that core base layer, right?
Yep. So we have a lot of automation, to be honest, for the set up the region, and then installation is the installations of all the operators. So like I told, it is all operators based. So for this we use Terraform, but we keep it using the TerraGrant. So this lets split the region into the configuration folders, and they are called like the Terraform modules, and we need the catalog kind of stuff. And this is managed all through the GitLab pipelines that allow us to make every even a very small change within the platform with much lower risk. So basically you can say, like, whenever there is a code merged into the master branch or the main branch, then we cut a release, and this release then goes and builds out a Docker image and the Kubernetes manifests, and then it is injected into a Helm chart, and then version is incremented. And upon that chart change, it will trigger a new Terraform release, which will be which will trigger the rollout through the TerraGrant pipelines. And this and any other DevOps practice, on the SRE front, we are doing a lot of those. And also the Terraform and the TerraGrant bit, they play a kind of role in the fast deployments. We are using a single configuration repository, single catalog repository, and there are over like more than 50 unique modules that are deployed across all the environments. So after that, like, we also have testing, staging environments. So we have our testing environment, we have our staging environments, we have dev nodes, and then we have staging nodes. So like as a developer, there are scripts that helps you kind of spin up the complete stack, which we call as a Civo stack. So we can spin up the complete Civo stack internally on a dev node as well, so that people can build their own stuff. And then it goes to kind of staging environment, which is close to the production. It has to be in this way. So that's how people People have been working, you have the dev, and then when you think it's kind of done, and then you move to kind of staging, and then you move to production, and that's how it goes. So I think that's pretty much good automation using the GitHub pipelines, Terraform, TerraGrant that the SRE team has achieved in the kind of past many months.
Yeah. And while DevOps is all about deploying the software, it's also about the people and empowering them to be as efficient as possible. You mentioned the team is up to about 30 now. Can you talk about the team structure and how, what different groups are focused on and how DevOps plays a role there?
Yep, absolutely. So we have various teams that that are involved in kind of different areas. Though the team is small, but still there are four key areas where we want each team to focus on. So like we have the Golang team because our Kubernetes operators, they all are written in Golang, and our API is now in Golang. So there's a good Golang team that we have. Then there is a SRE team, obviously the most critical one. So SRE team is handling all the automation stuff, and even doing more automation. So they have like set up the complete monitoring solution, which is kind of pretty exciting. And then you have your the alerting system, the Slack integrations, the firing of alerts, the pager duty, the on-call supports, and all those things are taken care by SRE. Obviously, the whenever there is a downtime or a maintenance window, then you have the SRE team who is kind of working through it, and then doing a kind of post-mortem of it, why it happened and how we can fix it so that it doesn't happen in future. So I as you mentioned, Andy, who's the CTO and co-founder. We live in a culture where we do no blame game. So it's see, mistakes can happen, and things can break, and things will break eventually. So what we do is, we, instead of pinpointing why you did that and why you did that, we focus on fixing stuff and making sure it doesn't repeat again, rather than pinpointing who did that and what should not have been done. So we try to kind of live in that sort of culture, and I have feel like people feel more comfortable in such environment where you are allowed to speak up, open your brain, do stuff, and then obviously you should try not to make mistakes, avoid them. But if it happens at all, then there is no blame game that happens over there. And then there is obviously the Rails team is there, which some components are there in that. We have a marketing team, again, very important team that has to be there. They take care of the community, they can take care of the events engagement, all the marketing stuff, the branding stuff. Obviously, the team is small, but the workload is more. Then the developer advocacy team, we had that. We also have now setting up a security team, so we have that as well. And yeah, each team, the only kind of motive is they are becoming a better version of themselves, and they are making the organization better as well, with the full work capacity that they are doing.
Got it. Yeah, it's interesting to hear the breakdown there. And you mentioned the SRE team and the topic of working through any challenges or downtime. Can you talk about the considerations as a platform provider, right? Because now you have your platform, and it's one thing for some random software as a service company to go down for an hour or 2 hours or however long. Because people are building their companies on top of Civo, what are the special considerations that you have to take in terms of SLAs or otherwise, security, multi-tenancy, that kind of stuff, as a platform provider that others are building on top of?
No, absolutely. So these things are very critical as a platform provider. So the kind of I forgot one team, which is the support team as well. So the support team is there to help support the customer queries and stuff. And we have our first hand support team. So that is a big consideration when we do it as a platform provider. Like we have a community engagement Slack, like people helping out each other. Then we have a support team which have a complete process of creating a ticket, assigning it to respective teams with the best of their knowledge. And they are also like I would name them as a support team, but they are a lot better in Kubernetes and understanding stuff. So they know the stuff well. And then we have, like, for the organizations, we are defining the SLA. SLAs are pretty important. It's Obviously we have prepared a document which says we'll be publishing that out soon as well, the updated one, because the KubeCon NA we went GA. And after that, we have been working on building the SLA, especially focusing on the critical SLAs for each service and the percentages of that. After that, we have like the minimum time. So time is very critical, like how much time the service goes down and you get some amount of credits if it's not between that SLA. So that is clearly mentioned. And what does the outage mean? What does each service, what does the outage mean is critical piece. If the companies are able to understand, okay, if marketplace, suppose the component in the marketplace is not working, does that come under outage or not? So those definitions clearly are important. So whenever there is an outage, the XYZ organization who is running on top of Civo Kubernetes, they know, okay, there was an outage for this much time, and this will be the percentage of the amount that will be credited. So I think that makes it very important to have achieve a good SLA and clear, not something, okay, SLA is there and we are not able to understand that, then there is no point. And same for the billing. Like the billing system is there. It's so complex that I'm not able to understand what bill I'm getting for. So in Civo, like the billing is pretty simple. It's a kind of very clear, precisely mentioned. This is the billing and this is what you'll get, and nothing more, nothing less. So it's completely like very transparent, kind of transparency in terms of, like I told you earlier, transparency with the community in terms of the roadmap. Similarly, transparency with the customers in terms of billing and the issues. I told you, like the outages, can happen. The mistakes can happen, and we try to improve and fix and be more stable and be more robust. For that, we have the plans. Security, so we have the pen test of our supercluster. So our supercluster is pen tested completely, and we also have a security team. Like one person is there, but still, a small team doesn't mean that we are not working on that. So a security team is there, handling the pen testing, handling the CVE issues and all that stuff. Then a multi-tenancy, I believe, is generally referring to splitting access of individual tenants in a single cluster. We have that for the customers having their own namespaces. Like I told, each customer has their own namespace and they cannot access each other via the API, CLI, or whatever tooling that they're using. So I think those are the critical pieces which we have.
Got it. And then, as many people think about DevOps as a consumer of a cloud platform, you have access to all these APIs. As a provider, you are dealing with both these bare metal data centers where you're hosting your clusters. What additional considerations do you have to take, or what challenges does that pose in terms of things like monitoring or automation, etc.?
Yeah, monitoring actually is a big aspect. Like you said, in terms of the customer cluster monitoring, that is also very critical. Our infrastructure monitoring, that is also very critical, and our supercluster monitoring, that is also a critical piece. So we the SRE team especially, they have implemented the observability stack. So we kind of using, if I talk about the stack, we use Thanos, we use Loki, Jaeger for the tracing, to allow us to collect every signals, the metrics, logs, traces. And then we have synthetic monitoring to emulate the customer journeys as well, and alerting based on thresholds. Like I told you, we have cluster launch times less than 2 minutes. So we have a certain thresholds, which if the cluster is not launched, then there is an alert fired. And our own code is having tracing inbuilt to enable our engineers to see the flow through the operations. So the flow through the operators, because we are dealing heavily with operators, so we should know like what is happening in each of those system. So I think our monitoring is kind of there, and we are having the best in class tools to be implemented. I think they having Thanos gives the ability to have the highly available and long-term storage, and we have our business critical graphs, which means when the business people they tend to see the graphs. We have the graphs like the cluster launch times over a period of time, because that is a graph that I want to see. It should not go up, and basically the trends graph. So those are very critical pieces. So the trends graph will only come when you have some amount of data over a period of time, and then as soon as the amount of failures, the amount of downtimes, they are going down. I believe we can kind of think, because that's the proof. We think, okay, the platform is moving towards more stability, it's becoming more robust, and also like the number of clusters increasing means the adoption is increasing. So I think those graphs, those metrics, the customer metrics, the region metrics, they are pretty important, and the observability piece should be there, not only for us, but even when that's the kind of thing that I go for, because I kind of implemented when I was working at my previous organizations, the complete observability stack. So business people, they look very thoroughly through the observability stack, and that has to be implemented in a way that you can start small, any organization, but if you quickly scale, then your solution should be able to scale, because those metrics, if you have lost those metrics, or some DB has corrupted, you didn't have the backup plan, then what you do? So you should be having that. And we kind of tend to have all those kind of corner cases where we have battle tested some of the things, and our staging environment is also having the monitoring solution, so we tend to know some of the issues beforehand, but whenever it comes in production, like we do that. We are kind of there is like another team I forgot to mention, which is the innovation team. So innovation team is kind of trying to find the innovations in the technology, like the GPUs. So researching on the GPUs, what best can be made use, providing as a service with the GPUs that we can procure. So those sort of stuff. Then AI ops. How can we plan the AI ops with the monitoring and with all the stuff that we have? So I think the R&D and the innovation team is also a very critical piece in the defining the roadmap and the next product strategy.
Yeah, that gives a good, I think, overview of operations at Civo and how DevOps plays a role for your team. Early on, you mentioned that one of your big focuses is on customer interactions with the platform. So let's shift a little bit and talk more about customers who are consuming the Civo platform using your clusters. How do you think about enabling them to work efficiently and effectively with the tools that you provide?
Yeah, I think one of the main challenges before, like, managed Civo Kubernetes was there. It was the cluster launch times. Okay, I have a piece of technology which runs on Kubernetes. I want to test that. Now, to test that, I need to wait, many minutes, and to get just the cluster, and then I need to install that software on top of that, and then I need to practice that. I mean, I don't even know, like, when the cluster is up, I would want to do that, because moods can change. So with that, like, when you are getting the cluster in less than 2 minutes, I think it's pretty dope. You just think, okay, there is I want to test, let's say, Rancher. So I want to test Rancher out there very quickly. I'll spin up a cluster, I'll install Rancher on that, and boom, I am able to test that. So I think that developer mindset, developer focused people are using the platform heavily. And on top of that, we have a feature called Marketplace. Marketplace is a set of more than 70 plus applications, open source applications, that you can install in one click. Just I gave the example of Rancher. There is a Rancher application which is there, and you just click on Rancher, and Rancher will be installed. You'll get the endpoint in the terms of ingress, because K3s comes pre-installed with traffic. So I think that again adds a value for that. You don't have to have the ingress as well. So it will having the ingress, and when you install the application, you just get the endpoint. Hit that endpoint, do your testing, and you're done. I mean, that's how it's easy to explore stuff. Then comes people who want to do live demos. So, in the live demo, you cannot wait for 20 minutes to just spin up the cluster. And if you want to show everything end to end, then you probably want the cluster spin up as well. I have done it many times, and people have been using extensively the Civo Kubernetes for live demos, and it has been like turned out great in terms of how well people can use it. Then in CI/CD, in testing scenarios, in CI pipelines, building and destroying the clusters. That is again very interesting use case over there. And K3S itself mentions their particular use case as a tool chain in this particular tool chain. So I think that is also very cool. We have like our CLI, Terraform, Pulumi, Crossplane providers which are there, and people extensively use the developer workflow rather than going to the UI and doing that. So they tend to do the developer workflow, the GitOps stuff, and make a complete the DevOps cycle, the CI/CD cycle that they want with respect to the cluster creation, deploying the stuff, and then destroying those. And then we focus on the enterprises as well. I mean, there are enterprise users. We have like suggestions areas where they give enterprises like where they give their suggestions. So enterprise users, obviously they demand some of the features. Like I told you about Teams. I think that would give enterprise user a big go-to, because that was the most needed kind of stuff. Because when you have an enterprise, every customer is not, every employee is not will not be creating their own accounts. So now they'll be able to have their own organizations, and team members can be added with the teams. So they can be different teams, and then you can define the quotas and do stuff. So I think that will be enabling more the enterprises users as well. We do have the enterprise customers, we are building the private region, all those things are there. And with that, this is the kind of these are the kind of use cases or users, you can say, like people using the Civo Kubernetes service. And apart from this, like I told you, there is a compute. So people do use compute if they have for certain reasons or certain use cases, they tend to use that. Again, that runs as a pod in their own namespace on our super Kubernetes cluster. So that is there. And few of the services like DBaaS is coming up in 2022. GPU is coming in 2022. So those are coming as well.
Yeah, and you hinted at this, but I could see that the fast spin up time would change how customers architect their developer experience. Whereas if you're on a cloud that takes, I don't know, 20 minutes to bring up a cluster, or 10 minutes, maybe you keep one large development cluster and put each developer into their own namespace, versus enabling an individual developer to spin up and spin down their own cluster for any particular use case.
Yes. And when a user when an employee joins the organization, you want to give them a complete isolated environment where they can play around, they can test the cluster, they can destroy them, without hampering any of the other stuff. You can have that on Civo Kubernetes. I mean, it's cheap. There's a cost comparison. There's a pricing page which exactly shows how much cheap it is with respect to other managed services. You have that. So we don't charge for the control plane. That is another big stuff over there, and against the other managed providers out there. And you only pay for the workloads that are running. And like I said, K8's footprint is heavy, because you have different components which are heavy. K3's footprint itself is very less. So even on the worker nodes where you have the K3s as an agent, installed, their footprint will be less. So you have almost almost maximum capacity to run your workloads on the nodes. So that is also another, like you are getting maximum out of kind of everything in the whole chain.
And is the current control plane configuration highly available in that there's multiple control plane nodes, or is it a single node?
Yeah, the team is currently working on the different mechanism of having this, because not everybody would be needing the highly available. So it doesn't make sense to have three control plane nodes for a one extra small cluster. So with respect to the number of nodes, workloads, CPU metrics, different set of metrics, we will be kind of changing the control plane number of nodes to achieve that.
Got it. And then how do you think about competing with some of these massive hyperscale clouds with 200 different services. What's the mindset there at Civo? You're really focused on this Kubernetes offering, and how do you go about growing and competing with someone like a AWS or a GCP down the road?
Yeah, I think I would say we are not too much focused on the number of services that we launch every quarter or things like that. We are focusing on a particular thing which is based on Kubernetes. Yeah, I am planning out the strategy for the product that makes sense for the next 5-10 years. We have to do that. We all have to do that, but we also want to create experience that the community understands, that the community loves, that the community will support, that the community can contribute to, that the community can ask features from. Let's say, Sid, you want to have a feature from Civo, so from GKE. I mean, you cannot just say, add that to GKE, but you can say that in Civo. So you can say, okay, I need this feature, and if it's the top rated feature, there's a suggestions tab in each account. So you can see all the suggestions made by our community members, and we have made a complete roadmap out of the top rated suggestions. So the suggestions turning into features, that is a great part. And then we are kind of in a Kubernetes way of doing things. So we are leveraging the power of Kubernetes. We know the limitations of Kubernetes. Our engineers have their the custom operators, the custom scripts, which are modifying some of the parameters to adjust the some of the limitations that are there, so that we can provision much faster, we can be more resilient. We have the NVMe drives that makes the efficiency over there as well. We The charging is pretty low, so everybody do not want to get charged just like that for using sometimes nothing. It has happened, and you can see on Twitter, you can search the complete history over there. But very clear pricing, very clear roadmap, very clear billing system, services where you get full support on, services where you get a full community support on. So I think we are, I think in the competing manner, it's okay. Like GKE has customers, AWS and Azure, they all have big customers. We have started, and the community has started to recognize us, which is a good thing. I really appreciate all the members. So the community is loving the work that we are doing, and we'll keep continuing improving that, improving the stability, and making sure it is kind of ready. Like you run your workload today, and after 10 years, it is still running the same way. So that is the kind of mindset that I want, from my service. Like I am there, I am a user, so we have to put ourselves in the shoes of the user. Like I have to be clear, transparent in terms of outages, SLAs, billing, and so and so. And if I deploy any workload today, it will be there 10 years later down the line. So I think that sort of mindset is what our team is having, and the culture that we are building within the team, 4-day work policy, giving ample amount of time to our employees to learn and grow within themselves, challenging tasks, working on the latest and the greatest technology. So I think all those itself, it boosts the employees so much that they themselves want to contribute even more. And we have our presence in the CNCF ecosystem. We have, I think, 3 CNCF ambassadors, tag app delivery lead. I'm involved deeply in CNCF ecosystem. You already know that. So I think that diversity is also there within the team. So we are not only focused on us, we are focused on the community, giving back to the community with like the academy completely free, actually no credit card required to learn from the academy resource, to be honest. The card is only there to use the services, not to learn. So I think with this, we are also focusing on giving back to the community, creating something which is beautiful out there and people would love to use, and the robust system.
Yeah, I think what I heard there is this hyper focus on end user experience and the community aspect, and almost using the fact that you are smaller and more nimble as an advantage to be able to be more receptive and adapt to things as they come in as suggestions and improvements.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, that is all the questions that I had for you today. Really appreciate the time. That gave a lot of insight into both Civo from a team perspective as well as from a customer perspective. Any closing words or maybe some advice for other DevOps engineers who are up and coming and building out this type of function at their own companies?
Yep, I think so. If you are kind of from a startup perspective, I think the team culture is very important. Give freedom to the team, no blame culture, kind of flexible working hours. Our team is completely remote. We have async Slack communications at time, and everybody is working in their own time zones. So you can imagine, like three like few Go developers, they're working in their own time zones, but still they are able to achieve what they want to achieve. So I think that can only come when you trust your team. That can only come when you have enough flexibility within your team. And obviously, if you want to learn from an end user perspective, definitely if you want to move to cloud, move to Kubernetes, then Civo Kubernetes is there, and a very valid and a very good and powerful option out there. Because I myself am working with the customer side, so you'll be directly dealing with me. How to move to Civo Kubernetes. So I think if you have any questions regarding that, shoot me on Twitter at the red Saiyam Patak. I'm there, and you can reach me out over there. We have our Civo YouTube channel. We try to contribute back in terms of webinars, doing we did a Civo hackathon, we did Civo boot camp, the DevOps boot camp for enabling the DevOps, the Kubernetes Civo Academy. So that is there free of cost. Make use of that. I would say, why not? I have curated that course, and the team, myself and my team has built it. So I think I have been there in the Kubernetes journey for a long time now, and I know where people get stuck, kind of. I have done all the kind certifications in the Kubernetes ecosystem. So I have created in such a manner that you'll be able to understand. The visuals are there, and the diagrammatic approach, the demos are there. So you'll love that. So make sure you check that out. And yeah, you get $250 credit when you sign up. So civo.com/sign up. Make sure you sign up. Just try it. So no harm in trying. So you try it out, see how fun it is, to spin up the clusters, do live demos, or for your home, for your own hosting, your own stuff, your own websites. And for enterprises, if you want to move, I can kind of tailor down some of the stuffs. We can definitely tailor down, some of the restrictions and work through that. So that's pretty much it that I want to tell. There are a lot of things. A lot of open source projects are there, like Civo, github.com/Civo. The CLI, the Terraform, Go, and all the marketplace. They are waiting for your contributions. So there are 70 plus apps by the community, and I myself contributed when I was a community member. So you can also do that. 9,000, close to 9,000 community members are there on Slack. You get to learn from them, and you get to ask and chat about technology, Civo Kubernetes, and Kubernetes in general from there. So healthy communication over there as well. So you get power everywhere.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's a great place to end things. We'll include links in the description to a lot of things. Definitely go check out Civo. Go check out Saiyam's YouTube page and his Twitter.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
YouTube channel. You have to check out that.
Yeah, you can't forget to plug that. Well, perfect. Thanks so much for your time. It was a great discussion. Take care.
Thank you, Sid. Nice. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care.